I was in so much pain. He brought my horse just to the door so I could just pet him. And just knowing that through anything, we could get through it together. And you shouldn't have to go through a health crisis to feel that way. And so now that I'm healthy, it's like that we're living that way. I think we've always appreciated one another, but the true appreciation that we feel now is just amazing.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Mirror in the Stall. I'm Amber Leidick with Confidence and Connection Coaching, and our guest today is Tammy Pate. In our conversation, we cover everything from how she grew up to how her and her husband raised their kids, the equine yoga experiences that she's held all over the world, how she healed herself from stage 4 cancer in less than a year, and last but not least, introducing her new program that's just a few years old, Art of the Cowgirl. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I do and look forward to hearing your comments. How are you this morning?
I'm great. I'm coming to you from Rygate, Montana, in my little cabin. So I'm doing the social distancing.
I was going to say, through when we were setting up, I was like, oh, look at how cute. Like your house, I love it.
Thank you. It's pretty sweet. This cabin was hand-built by an older gentleman, Fred Kugel, and I just fell in love with it. And we had a neighboring place, and he sold it to us, and it's just a very special place.
Yeah, my mom would just die. That's her thing. She's always, I just want a little tiny log cabin, and just all the time. There you
Sorry.
go. So that's okay. We'll start off with, how did you get into horses? Like, how were you born into it? Did you get into it later? Like, how did that story go for you?
Well, absolutely was born into it. So Rygate, Montana is about 60 miles from Billings. And both of my parents, my mom, Shirley, my dad, Gordon, were 5th generation right here in this area. And my mom's folks had a big ranch. And so, I mean, I was on my horse. My dad was a bulldogger, and I was born in Fort Hood, Texas on an Army base. And he had me on a horse when I was 4 weeks old and been riding ever since. So
that's good.
I grew up rodeoing, actually. I did all the events, high school, college rodeoed, junior rodeoed. So, yep, I've been riding my whole life.
Oh, good. So good. So the reason I was so excited to talk to you was the story that Regina had briefly told me was about how you had not followed along with mainstream things when you had a health thing come up. And so I feel like it's important now because of all of the stuff that's going on, and people are really living from a space of fear and, anxiety and uncertainty. And I feel like there are so many situations that go on in general in life that bring up these emotions. But it's so highlighted for everyone as a whole right now, which for me, I kind of feel like in one way, it's something now that the entire world has in common. So at some level, it's sort of bringing everyone together. So what is your story around that when that happened to you? How did that look? How did you find all of that out, all of that stuff, that whole story?
Well, maybe I'll start back 20 years. So my husband and I have, because I think that's really what led me to some decisions. So 25 years ago, we were working on a ranch, and Kurt was starting colts, and we've just never been people that kind of followed the mainstream for whatever reason. Not that we're rebels or anything, just like what felt right. So Kurt actually got the opportunity to start colts with Buck Brannaman, which then led to an opportunity for us to work on the Horse Whisperer, which then led an opportunity for him to make a living our whole life as a clinician. And back in the day, you know, that wasn't a thing. We didn't know we could do that. So we've always taken risks. And we took our kids out of school and I homeschooled them so that we could all go to on the road together. And I've always been interested in health. So I started practicing yoga. I love to cook. I love to eat healthy. And I've always searched for what felt right for me. So, you know, I guess you could say that we are adventurers and we're risk takers. So less than a year ago, after being healthy my entire life, my only maybe issue was what a self-diagnosed irritable bowel, you know, which as women, a lot of us have, you know, get nervous, or that's kind of where my stress went, I felt. But other than that, never, I don't even have a doctor. I have a naturopath that I just stay healthy. And I was having some major gut issues, which led me to go to the hospital, same day clinic. And within about 8 days, our life completely turned upside down. I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer that had metastasized to all of my bones and my kidney area. And with about 2 weeks after that, my kidneys failed and I ended up having nephrostomy tubes. And, you know, like I went from what I thought, you know, on top of the world to my first oncology appointment. They told Kurt and I that I should really kind of go do what I want to do in the next 5 years, because that's what they were giving me. And we just didn't know what to do. You know, at first it was a panic. I'm going to go to Mexico. We're going to sell everything. We're going to find everything. And then we just kind of settled for a minute. And my daughter Mesa and her boyfriend HD called me and told me about Joe Tippins, a man from Oklahoma who had cured his cancer. His claim was he had cured his cancer, small cell lung cancer, with fenbenzidol, Panacure wormer that we use on our horses. So I had already made the decision that I did not want to do chemo. I just felt like quality versus quantity is more important to me. And if they had probably said I was stage 1 and I could beat this, I would have said, I probably would have gone for anything. But I just said, no, I'm not going to put my body through that. I'm super healthy. You know, why haven't I known? It was kind of I have to say, probably the hardest thing for me was my ego through all of this, because I've always felt that I was so healthy and I was proactive and I was ahead of it, and I take vitamins and I work out and I eat right. So there was a moment when I was like, I practice yoga every day. Like I should be in tune with my body. And it was interesting because actually when I got the diagnosis, when I went to this great doctor, same day doctor, he's retired in Billings, and I went for a gut issue. He was like, you know, are you worried about anything? And I said, well, honestly, since last October, I kind of had this pain in my back. And when I wake up in the night, I kind of think maybe my left breast feels a little different. But I'm going through menopause. It's always, you know, I've always had fibrous breasts. It's always felt different. So I'm sure it's nothing. It's just menopause. And he got me in right away for a mammogram. So I think on some level, I did know there was something wrong, but I didn't address it because I was busy with life, you know? So that's a lesson in that follow your gut. But so fast forward, I decided I didn't want to do chemo. I was going to try the fenbenzidol. May 19th, when I had my scans, my breast tumor was 3.5 inches long, an inch deep, and a 1/4 inch thick. On October 24th, after I started taking the Panacure July 1st, and I took it every day until October 1st, except when I was in the hospital with a blood infection. And on October 24th, I had scans. They cannot see my breast tumor. It's gone. It was not on the scan. Mm-hmm. And my blood tumor markers are normal. I got my nephrostomy tubes out. They told me I would never have those out, that I would live with those the rest of my life. And I feel I have never been healthier, actually. I have no gut issues. I did some food testing and I eliminated dairy. I still eat meat. And based on science, I did all of this food testing and learned what my body actually has digestive enzymes, because, you know, inflammation is huge for cancer. And so I wanted to eliminate as much inflammation in my body as possible. So I was willing to give up anything. And so it turns out I have digestive enzymes for everything except dairy, which I have eaten my entire life. And another really interesting thing, how, you know, I think these things, they don't happen overnight. I think it is our path. And as I look back, they told me lobular breast cancer, the type of breast cancer I have, is often misdiagnosed as irritable bowel, because how it spreads through your body and it's slow growing, and it likes to go to the gastrointestinal area. It's been showing me signs for years, and I just didn't recognize them, or, you know, it wasn't diagnosed. So, yeah, I'm actually grateful for this opportunity, because I've dug deep in my values and beliefs, and I believe in it. And I believe that the Panacure has saved me. So as of right now, I'm considered in remission. So no evidence of disease is what they call it.
Right. Yeah, I find that so interesting, because I've talked to a couple people about it since I first chatted with you. And it's just, we put so much faith in doctors who I don't think they're necessarily coming from a place of, I know something you don't know and I'm not going to tell you. I believe the way that they're in school and what information and knowledge they're given is just what they're given. And here, XYZ, this is what my textbook says. So, and then interestingly, it reminds me of a woman who came here, and it was like a Make-A-Wish for kids, but it was for adults. And so she was in hospice, and she had kidney failure, and she just wanted to be around horses one more time, because they had told her she doesn't have very much longer. And she came here, and she was in a wheelchair and oxygen, and she was so amazing. And the one thing that she had sat down, it was her birthday, and we had cake up here and brought the mini horses up, and she had said, you know, that I've been in hospice for 2 years, and I'm the only patient that's ever left and come back, you know, like gone somewhere and came back. And we were like, you've been in hospice for 2 years? And she said, yeah. And that when the doctors told me it's time for you to go to hospice, this is the end for you, but we want to make you comfortable. She was like, absolutely not. Like, you cannot tell me when I'm going to die. She was like, I really feel like I'm in hospice just to prove to them that they were wrong, and that I was absolutely not going to die when they said. But she also, being there for so long, got to touch so many people's lives that were there, and only for a short period of time. But I looked at her and realized, like, her strong belief of what was for her was literally what changed her experience for her there. And so I feel like when people hear that from a doctor, and this is XYZ, and they take that on as their belief, they make it their reality, instead of going, wait, let's actually look at what's going on, you know, knowing that we're all human beings, doctors as well, that have only this. So instead of jumping to, oh my gosh, this is it, I only have 5 years, it's like, but what else could possibly be, right?
Yeah, I couldn't wrap my head around that, you know, that, and two of my very, very best friends, I went through the cancer process with them and they lost their lives. And, you know, I really meditated on their experience, and that's not my experience. Their story is not my story. And, you know, I may not have control, but I can control how I spend my time. And I have no intention of dying in 5 years. You know, I have every intention of living a long, healthy life. And, you know, as new things become available. But the thing about the panic cure that is so interesting in the research that I've done, they've known about it. They've known about it. They were doing some research in 2002 at MD Anderson, and it's real. And how, from, you know, I'm not a doctor, but from what I understand about it, it attacks a gene in the cancer cell and kills the cancer cell and doesn't harm healthy cells around it. So it actually does have a kind of a chemotherapy effect on the cancer cell, but it doesn't kill your immune system. And, you know, when I went to Seattle, the oncologist there told me that they've all heard about it. And my oncologist in Bozeman is on board. And, you know, if anyone is watching this now and has been diagnosed, my advice, unsolicited advice, I'm not saying to try panic cure or not, but if your oncologist isn't willing to treat you, individual, find a different one. Because, you know, Dr. Thomas, he's like, Tammy, this is your story. This is I will support you. Unless, you know, he's like, unless I feel like you're doing something totally harmful. But,
right.
But the proof is, you know, I asked him, I'm taking letrozole, which is it makes sure that my body doesn't make any estrogen because my cancer is hormone positive. But that's the only other pharmaceutical I'm taking. And I asked him, I said, would I have these results with just letrozole? And he said, no. He said, keep taking the panic cure. So now I take it 4 days a week on, 3 days off. And for anyone who's interested, you know, there's different, I take I'll go get it. I take the cattle and horse liquid wormer, just because it was cheaper and easy. I'll take the granules, the dog wormer, which is probably easier to travel with. But it's super, it tastes like chalk. You just shoot it down. You know, I bless it every time I take it, and I go on living life. But it's been an interesting journey. One I wouldn't wish on anyone, and yet I feel like, for instance, I produced Art of the Cowgirl that we talked about earlier. And the first year, it was a blur. Like, I really don't even remember because I was just so scattered. And this past January, we produced our second. And I remember every moment about it. It really has changed. And I thought I was that way. You know, I thought I practice yoga. I do horsemanship and yoga retreats where I preach, you know, breathing, being in the moment. And yet I really don't think I was living that way all the time. So this has given me that opportunity.
Yeah, it's so good. And that's what is the same. I try to encourage people to really look at it like the stuff that happens to you happens for a reason. And if you block yourself off and get so stressed and so worried and so defeated, then you miss actual gifts within the things that are happening for you.
Yes.
And worrying about the future and then worrying about what you should have done, it just really robs you of the experience you're having in that moment. So what was maybe like the biggest takeaway? I know you said living in the moment, but while you were going through that whole process and while you were researching and trying to make those decisions, what was the biggest thing for you that you feel like got you through it, that you can kind of fall back on and go, okay, this is where I like know I can get solid and kind of stand and then make decisions from this place? What was that for you?
I might start crying. um, really and truly, it was my faith in God and my relationship with my husband. You know, we have been busy and we've had ups and downs in our marriage, and family has always been the most important thing to me. And I have a son, Ryle, who's 30, who has a little baby, and my daughter, Mesa. They're the most important things in my life. But Kurt,
You're gonna make me cry. Now I'm crying.
no, but the way he up, I feel like, you know, I've always supported him in his life, in his choices, and I followed him anywhere. I would follow him anywhere. But in the moment, he was willing to give up anything and everything. And he cleaned my nephrostomy tubes, and when I was, I had stents in my kidney ureters, and I was in so much pain. He brought my horse just to the door so I could just pet him, and just knowing that through anything we could get through it together. It was the best part of this. And you shouldn't have to go through a health crisis to feel that way. And so now that I'm healthy, it's like that we're living that way. Like, just, I think we've always appreciated one another, but the true appreciation that we feel now is just amazing. So I think that's family, you know. And yeah. Sorry, I got all teared up.
Don't be sorry. I feel like it's interesting because we do talk a lot about that with people in relation to, for some reason, within this masterclass, a lot of people's spouses showed up and wanted to join. And I found a theme through clients that I have at other barns as well, where they use the horses escape.
Yes.
When I'm like, really what you should be doing is should be where your escape is, and everything else is sprinkles on top. So don't run from your home base, make that solid, and then all the other stuff is in addition to, right? Like,
absolutely. Yeah. And really, you know, you hear this and people say it, but it is the little things that are the most important. Like, you know, honestly, the first time I got on my horse was like, oh my, I'm living. Like, we were all crying. And actually, the first time, because I lost so much weight and I lost so much strength, the first time I saddled my horse, like, Kurt wanted to do everything for me. And I'm like, I have to build my strength back up. I have to saddle my own horse. I mean, as nice as he did that for me, it was little things like that. And so I think it really, the appreciation for physical ability, it was just, I won't take that for granted again, for sure. Mm-hmm. My dog just came in and she's wanting love.
I know, I could see her on the door like, hey, let me in. Hey. So you had mentioned that you do yoga retreats with horses. What does that look like?
So when I first started getting into yoga, I came to it probably from a very egocentric place. You know, I wanted to look like the yogis. I wanted to be able to do the things. And I remember going to my first yoga class. My son was practicing basketball, that was kind of my time. I would drop him off at basketball practice and I would go to this yoga class. We were living in Helena, Montana at the time. And I remember trying to touch my toes and being in tears, because not only could I not touch my toes, I could not even sit, with my legs straight out and sit up straight. My hips were so tight. So I thought, oh my gosh. And then the more I practiced, the more I realized yoga is horsemanship and everything about it. The word yoga means to yoke or unite the physical, mental, and spiritual states of being. And when I think about riding, when we ride our horse, what are we trying to do? Not only are we trying to balance ourselves, but we're trying to stay in balance with another living and yoke or unite with our horse. So I just fell in love with it. And at the time we were going to Hawaii, working for a dear friend of ours, Nancy Jones, starting colts, and a good friend of hers, Janice Baxter, was a yogi. So I would practice yoga with her. We would ride colts, drink some wine, and we came up with this idea to have a yoga and horsemanship retreat. And because at that time, Kurt was kind of leaving the horse world and going more toward the cattle. And I love the horse world and I love people. So Kurt's like, why don't you go do clinics? And so, but I wanted it to be about us as an individual. Like at the time, this was 15 years ago, I think that there was a gal in California that was kind of doing a yoga horse thing, but she was kind of doing poses on horses. And I wanted it, because we ride, we rope, like I wanted to use the yoga practice to become more in balance with ourselves, to take that gift to the horse and give people confidence and get out of an arena and ride and follow their dreams. So we practice yoga on a mat first. We do our yoga practice, and everything that we do, I try to relate to how it affects us when we get on our horse's back. And so then we go and then we do a horsemanship lesson, and might be cattle work, or we ride out on trails, just different, whatever the clinic kind of interest is. But I love it. I've been doing it for 15 years now, and it has taken me across the world. So I started at the home ranch, a guest ranch in Clark, Colorado. And then I've gone to different guest ranches and then different private barns, and have kind of developed this following. And I have this group of women who are just adventurers. So I've taken them to Hawaii, Costa Rica. Year before last, I took a group to Mongolia. And the whole idea is that we immerse ourselves in the culture, in the horse culture, and practice yoga. So I'm very blessed, for sure, to have this life and opportunities to share all these things.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I want to come.
Yeah. Oh, we have to get to practice.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because I do hot yoga, and it's the same thing for me. Maybe it's because the way we are when we're on the horse, when we ride, but that is always the one thing for me where I'm so flexible in all the other ways. But the moment I sit down and that part, I'm like, like, what is it? It's interesting. You find out a lot about your body, but it's interesting too that now that I'm so much more conscious of setting intentions and awareness, because I did practice yoga a long time ago, and it was more about my body, and then I was out of it for a very long time, and then got more into this stuff. And then when I went to start practicing again later last year, it was like being in there and going, oh, and all of these things coming to me, and it was just like, wait a minute, this is a totally different experience. This isn't about an exercise. This is something very different. All these realizations are coming to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Absolutely. Well, and yeah. I had another thought when you asked about kind of a takeaway from the cancer situation, and it kind of goes along with exactly what you're saying. And I think when you've been riding, you're very, like, am experienced. I'm confident on a horse, and it's easy for us when we have skill and some knowledge to kind of force things to happen. Yeah, I mean, I can get after the best of them and make it happen. And I realized that, like, through the cancer situation, you can't force anything. Like, it's the fight. Like, I think that it's very important to have fight in you and try, and but we're physical, and letting go of the physical and I don't know how I'm trying to say this, but coming to where you are in yoga right now, your practice, it's not all about the physical body. It's about being open and seeing things from a different perspective and being willing to let go of an outcome. I guess that's what it is. I think there was a moment, and I have to fight this. The fight in me, like, I have to really come back to the outcome is going to be the outcome, and finding the path that is with dignity and grace, I think. And I think that goes to our horsemanship. Like, we can make horses do anything we want to. We can put enough pressure, and we can put enough, something's probably going to give at some point if they don't completely understand it. But if we're just not totally just buy into the outcome, and we just enjoy the process, I bet it's even more beautiful. And so I hear that from you, where you are now, and these things that just come, and it just puts a new perspective on things.
Yeah, and it's the fight feels like the fight for the ego to want to come in. Like, I know what to do. Here, we'll do this. And it's like, no, we just have to surrender. That's like, seems like it's like the fighting, the want to like force it. And you're like, no, I can't force it. I just surrender.
Yeah. And I think that for me, that's the challenge or opportunity, is to find that line where do I step over it and start demanding or forcing, and where can I step back and just let it unfold, but not be a victim. I'm not a victim. Right. Like, that is one thing, even through this panicure idea. Look, if it doesn't work at some point, nobody but me made this, and my husband made this decision. I made it for me. I am responsible for it. And I feel good about that. I'm willing to live with that. And if for some reason this, doesn't work at some point, then I'll have another decision to make. And I think that's important, and even like for you training horses for people, or, you can only do what you can do, but it's ultimately the individual's decision on how they react, respond, and follow through with things. So I think, and especially in this time, like right where we are with the coronavirus, like, we all have a responsibility. It's not up to someone else to take care of us. And so I don't know, that's my rant.
No, it's very in line with the process of where I've been to where I am now with the horse training. That was very much me. I went to Colorado and I spent a year. I'd ridden for a really long time. I spent a year with John and Josh Lyons. Like, I felt like I needed some type of structure. Like, I know that I can ride my horse, but my horse was always very good for me. So I didn't have a clue, really. And so I did that, and I came out like, I know all the things. Like, I know everything. And a lot of what I did was following the steps that we did. There was no real connection being made with me. It was like, this is what we need to do. This is how I start you. I have a problem horse. This is how I fix it. And my disconnect was always, I could feel like I could connect with the horse, but I couldn't really connect with the person, because that was something that was really never modeled to me when I was young. So I was drawn to the horse. And the things that I would say to the people was coming from a place of, it's so annoying that I have to deal with the person side of this. I wish you could just be good for your horse. And so I could never help them actually maintain after, until I went through some of the stuff I went through and started diving deeper for myself. And then I realized, oh, I can connect with people. Oh, I actually do like people. And my intention behind the I was saying changed so they could actually hear me. Whereas other trainers were, I say things to my people, my clients, and they get defensive or they don't understand. And I'm like, do you really want to, do you know how to connect with them? Is the intent behind what you're telling them because you think they're not smart enough to figure it out and it's annoying, or because that's what I did for years? And people, so it's like going, I can align with this person, I can align with this horse. And now from that place, I'm not afraid to say, this is actually you. And like, but let's sort this out together. Like, I'm here to support you figure this out. So I have no problem saying, I'm not going to fix your horse loading in the trailer, because it's not the trailer that's the issue.
That's right.
It's your control issues that are standing in the way of your horse getting in the trailer. So it is really letting go of the part of me that wants to look like a good, successful horse trainer, because that's not what my stuff looks like anymore. And I had to kind of let go of that and go, that's not why I'm here anymore.
But I mean, I just applaud you, because that is not a lot of people can let go of their ego and step back and really self-analyze and come from the heart, you know. And actually my yogi Janice, you know, when we talk about yoga, the connection of physical, mental, spiritual states of being, she always adds in heart, always.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, it is hard, like when you're, but it's hard to set boundaries, like when your heart is in it and you're giving all you can truly give because you want someone to succeed. But again, it goes back to responsibility. Then it's up to the person to do with that information. And that's where, when I started doing clinics, it was so hard. Like, I could kind of coerce people into doing things that they weren't really ready to do because I wanted it so bad for them. But what it's like, loping, you know, I'm like, if they can just do it once, and it says like, but what I was doing is forcing people, like, in a sweet way, but people don't want to let the trainer down. They don't want to, they would never say no to me. So it was never their idea. And it's like, you know, what we want to do with horse is make it, we set it up so that it's a horse's idea. And right. I was forcing people. So when I could step back and say, you know what, it's my ego. I want them to lope. You know, I think I'm a good clinician if I can get people over their fear of loping. But in some cases I was instilling more fear. So letting go of the outcome. Doesn't matter if they lope. Mm-hmm. You know, but we put all this pressure on ourselves that, oh my gosh, they're paying me all this money, and if I don't do A, B, and C, kind of like the steps that you were talking about with the problem horse, it doesn't look successful. But I've learned that that's not true. And now when I just give people the tools and the opportunity, when it's their idea, it's 1,000 times more successful for not only them, but me too, because they haven't felt manipulated. And I mean, I could manipulate people and I wasn't doing it consciously, but when I step back and I'm like, why are you doing this? And it was the ego, like, because I can, because I can, and don't do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, we have something to talk about.
Like, I feel like we could do this for hours.
Yeah.
I definitely want to also circle to. I know everyone's locked in their houses. it's such a nice thing to think of, having to spend this time separate from doing the normal things that people do, and knowing you can still go out and ride. And I feel like we're so much more blessed because we have this thing that we would rather be spending time doing anyway. So it's this opportunity for us to go, well, we can't do anything else. So I do want to talk about your Art of the Cowgirl thing for sure, because that feels amazing. And if you want to tell people what that's about and what you do with it.
Sure. So as I said, Kurt, for many years, oh, my dog's whining again. We're here by ourselves. So her buddy is not here, and we have squirrels. Loves to go out and chase the squirrels.
Everyone started growling and barking when they heard your dog's collar. They both ran outside. There's a dog here. Every time.
So we worked on the road and did colt starting demonstrations and clinics all over the country. And Kurt worked a lot at horse expos. So I was exposed to that idea of an expo. I'm an artist. I paint and I build custom cowboy boots. And I was mentored back when we were working on a ranch when our kids, Mesa was a baby, a toddler, when I first started building boots. So that was about 26 years ago. And I had gone in to just use a sewing machine because at the time I was redoing the old wagon wheel furniture for antique shows. And my sewing machine broke down. So I went into the boot shop, Mike Ryan, and he let me work in his shop for a week. And then he offered me a job. He was 5 years behind boot making. And he said, you can sew and you work with leather, you can build boots. So I built boots for many years with Mike, and it supplemented our income. We were working on a ranch. And so after Kurt's career really took off, I kind of put it away for many years, but always loved the trades and custom. So I came up with this idea about 6 years ago of creating an event that would help fund fellowships so people could go learn a trade. So like boot making, saddle making, horsemanship, rawhide braiding. And I wanted to do it, but there was always fear holding me back. Like horse expos have just suffered over the last years. Kurt's kind of like, you could lose a lot of money doing this, and just all kinds of, oh no, you can't do this. But I kept coming back to it and kept dreaming about it. And then I came up with a name for it. And so 2.5 years ago, it would be 3 years ago now, on New Year's Eve, I told Kurt, this is my year, I'm doing it, or I will regret this the rest of my life. So I jumped. I called every company that we had worked for and with, and they all sponsored my first event. And in our first year, we funded 6 fellowships. And so we just had our second event in Phoenix, Arizona, at the Corona Ranch. And my daughter Mesa helps me produce it. And we produce a world's greatest horsewoman event, a women's ranch rodeo, an elite ranch horse sale. And then at the event, we have clinicians, demonstrations. And my intention is to give up-and-comers an opportunity to present. So we had Sandy Collier, but we also had Alicia Adamson, who was our fellowship recipient who worked with Lee Smith, come and do her first horsemanship demonstrations. And Jen Zeller from South Dakota did a colt starting demonstration. So I wanted to give more women opportunities to experience being a clinician at an event. And then all of our master artists who teach the recipients their fellowships, they all did demonstrations on their craft. So I really wanted them to explain the functionality of their art and then what makes it uniquely their own art. And I feel like the horsemanship, you know, the colt starting is the foundation, and then the disciplines are the art. And so that's the whole theme. And we had a trade show, and it's maker oriented, all custom makers. It was just, this past January, it exceeded every expectation that Mesa and I had, and it was phenomenal. So we're already planning for year 3, and it's going to be great. And it's, you know, we all leave something, and or we hope to, and this is my give back to the industry. And my goal is, we don't have to have the event to fund the fellowships. We can, you know, do that. And that's what I want long term, is this fellowship program to become so big that not only can we send these people to go learn a trade, but then we can help them set up their business. You know, do they need machines? Do they need business help? Do they need, you know, what do you need to be successful? And my ultimate goal is to possibly have like a saddlery where we could bring all of these makers, because a lot of these women work on ranches. You know, they're supplementing their income. They don't have a retail space, and a place where we could have artists in residence. We could showcase this work, and I don't know, the sky's the limit. But I just love it. And it's all because of the horse. You know, every single thing that I've done in my life is because of the horse. The confidence that I have as a person, as a woman, came from my mom and dad, my grandma and grandpa, and the first horse, my horse, Friday. When I was 11 years old, I mean, I'd ridden, but they bought me this old campaigner horse that had been there, done that, and that horse gave me the confidence. I just, yeah. So the horse is the most important thing.
Yeah, I feel like that's the theme with everyone that's come on, is that everybody's call is very different, but the common theme is that there's always the horse involved, stringing through each thing that each person is doing, just to show like how impactful they are as an animal, you know, the diverse way that they touch people. You know, we have someone coming on next week that does healings with them for trauma patients. We have, you know, people that are just trainers. It's like it's interesting when you really step back and look at it, because for so long I've been a trainer, and I go, yeah, the horse, people own horses, people ride horses, people show horses. And I know that there's bigger things that get done with them, but to really see how impactful they are in people's lives at such a different level now is just like, they're so necessary.
Well, and really, even for people who don't own them, like a lot of my clientele that come to my retreats, they don't own horses, but they spend a ton of money coming to a place that, number one, they feel safe, that they have this experience, and all they want to do is connect with a horse. And they fall in love with these dude ranch horses. You know, I mean, if I ever come back as a horse, a guest ranch horse would probably be the hardest job, but in a way, the most rewarding, because these people fall in love with a horse every week. I mean, that horse gets someone new and he has changed their, because they leave. You know, I say, I wish that we could have another City Slicker movie to help the guest ranch industry, because it is one place, and maybe through all this coronavirus, maybe staying home and getting back to roots will be more important to people. But guest ranches are an amazing place. And but it proves every little girl, even if she's born in the city, wants a horse. And it's weird, isn't it? And isn't it strange? I've often thought of this too. Isn't it strange how women can be, and I'm speaking for women because they are who I deal with mostly, can be so fearful like shaking, afraid, and they get on a horse anyway. Like it's one of the things, like most of them, if they're afraid of skiing, they don't go ski. Or if you're afraid of heights, you're not going to jump out of a plane. It's easy to say no, but they overcome fear because the connection to a horse is so important. It's
Yeah, me and my mom and my sister, a few years ago, my stepdad got us a trip we rode horses from Aspen to Vail, and we stopped at hunting cabins along the way.
Oh, how fun.
And it was fun. And we were with people that I told my mom, you tell them that I have no experience. I don't want to have to I just want to sit there and of course we show up and they unload all the horses at the trailer, van you up to the top, and I'm looking at all the horses and I'm like, okay, we're gonna ride in the mountains. Like, oh, God knows there's I'm like California. We're like, there's bears out here, Mom, And I'm standing there and I'm looking at all the horses. Every single horse has a curb bit on, and then I see one horse in a snaffle, and I was like,
that's my horse.
What did you tell them? And they were like, oh, that one's yours. And I was like, interesting. We heard you're a trainer. I was like, I'm not a trainer. She was great. She was a little green, but she was great. And I absolutely fell in love with her. And she actually reminds me of she was like a doppelganger for my mare, who at the time was only 2. And I felt like this is what my mare's going to be like. And it was interesting because it was, I think, 4 days. And we did things that, like I said, I'm from California, and there's not a lot of, there is, but for me, trail riding was never big for me. I was never out in the open. And my first horse, when we would go trail riding, was like, he was half Arab, half quarter. And I always used to say he'd be quarter horse for the first part, and then a switch would go off. And he'd be running backwards with me or running off with me. So the trail for me, I was like, I'll stay showing because we do really good in the show ring. Please don't make me go on the trail. So the first thing that happens when we get on these horses, and I don't know this horse, we're going down this it was the first 5 minutes of the ride, and it was this tree and then a creek at the bottom, and there was a normal trail and then a drop off part. And I'm like, oh, she's just gonna follow the rest of the horses. They wouldn't put me on, and she was skirt, right down this, and I was like, oh God. It was immediately trust me, because this is what we're doing. They're like, oh, she's born on this ranch. She's packed a bunch with us. She just hasn't taken a lot of people. And I'm like, you can't. So it was a big thing for me, because I really did have to surrender, because I was like, no, knowing that I do this. I ride horses, multiple horses every day. And then I'm on this horse that I don't know, in a situation where I was highly uncomfortable. We're riding down crazy trails. There's bear poop. And I'm like, California. But that process, I think, is what bonded me so close with this horse that I don't know. I was like, it's you and me, because you've all I've got. But then to also see the people there were 2 women who hadn't really ridden, and they were a little bit fearful. And it was you picked this to start off with. This is intense for me, and this is what I do. But it was interesting to see them over the couple days just completely let go of all of it, and it was the connection piece, because then you're with this group of people that you don't know, and you're in this little cabin on the top of this mountain, and there is nothing, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no, anything. It's just you and these people around a fire. And it was interesting because my yoga teacher, actually, a couple weeks ago, before we started, she was like, what do you think people used to do before there were antidepressants, before there was alcohol, before there was all of this stuff? What did people do? And then she was like, they came around the fire and they shared stories. And that was healing for them to be able to share. And it was healing for other people to be able to hear and connect. And so it was interesting when I think about that now, when I do these calls or when I have my clinics with people, it's what do people actually want? They want to be able to connect, and learning how to connect with yourself and how you feel allows you the ability to connect with other people and to your horse. So it's this cool.
And also, and to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Having those experiences where you got down the mountain and you felt safe, being in this area, the cabin with people you don't know, but you've shared these experiences and you all feel safe together. I think that that's huge. I think if you don't feel safe, you don't connect with the horse, with people. And I think that that's something that we really need to focus on in the world right now, because people aren't feeling safe, and then they do crazy things. They act out, and it manifests itself. So I don't know. It's a tough world right now, but I think that when all of this is over, people are going to be so appreciative of the opportunity to spend time. If they can get through it financially, I think it might be a shift that our country needed to really focus on what's important. And I think it's going to open opportunities for people, like working remotely from home. Like, how much stress could you take off from your life if you didn't have to walk out your door every day and you could work from home? I mean, not all people are disciplined enough to do that, but the ones who do, like, who knows what this could do for us? I mean, I hope it does great things. And I hope it's good for the horse industry.
Yeah, I feel the same. And it's just, there's so many parents that are having to stay home with their kids. And, I've got my little one here, and it allowed me to have a deeper, I keep saying that because I keep saying I don't love the way school is set up. I don't like how kids are conditioned to sit down, be quiet. This is what's important. When I'm like, this isn't necessarily what's important. But at the same time, I was like, how can I have him here all the time, provide that, and then also do what I'm doing as I'm transitioning and trying to build this in a different direction. But like now I just don't have I don't have a choice. So it's presented this, well, now I have the opportunity to let him sleep as long as his body needs to sleep. To make, when we wake up in the morning, we don't have to be rushed. It doesn't have to be this stressful thing. And bless you. And it's like, and we can still get your schoolwork in. It doesn't have to be this stressful go, which I think is great, because now it's like an unconditioning, and we're tapping into stuff for him that I didn't know was there. Yeah. And he had kind of a meltdown. And it was like, yeah, actually, ironically, playing the game Life with my mom. And I knew right then, I was like, this is bigger. And so when we got back to my house, we walked back down here, and I just said, I realized I'd asked him the question, what's wrong? And I feel like I need to stop asking that, because it makes the emotions that you're feeling wrong. And this morning I woke up and I went, oh my God, people need to stop asking that, because there's so much judgment, and like, there is no emotion that you're feeling that is wrong. And so I had that talk with him last night, and I realized he's afraid he's not going to see his friends. He's he doesn't know what's going on. And for me, looking at him going, you get to hang out, we're relaxed, everything's going to be fine. But I didn't really like sit down with him and go, why are you crying right now? And there's something bigger, and what is it? So it is an opportunity for people to connect deeper. And he trudged up stuff that he was afraid the power was going to go out from one time a long time ago. And I was like, okay, like, so it was like a really deep conversation with a 6-year-old. It was
awesome. I am so impressed that you, first of all, saw that and how you're handling it. And I really feel like, how kids see their parents and people that influence them, how they see them handling the situation, it's going to set them up for their life. How do you deal with these unforeseen circumstances that affect us so profoundly? And if we react and we're fearful, that's how they're going to grow up in fear. So good for you. How awesome.
It was just an interesting moment where I was like, so all of the feelings, like, what are they? You're supposed to feel all of them. And I was going to even do a video on it, for there's so many parents' experiences where the kids are acting out, and you see all these posts where they're like, oh, I'm drinking wine to deal with being at home with my kids. I'm like, do you understand they're acting out because there's deeper things that they don't understand? And because we assume they do. But until I stopped and was like, he's crying, like big tears over the fact that he didn't get to buy a third house in life. And I was like, this cannot be about this game. There has to be something much larger happening.
So I have the kind of story about, I think, how children perceive the world and what their reality is. So when our kids were little, we didn't have TV, but we had a VCR back in the day, and I put movies in for them. So John Wayne and the Cowboys was their favorite. And then at that time, Dances with Wolves was huge. So he took Mesa to an Indian powwow in Helena, and Ryle was 4 and Mesa was 2. And they had the drums, and they were all, beating the drums, and Mesa just goes down there, and I'll back up. We're walking into the building, and there's all of these guys, and they have painted faces and everything, and I see Ryle get really close to Kurt and reach up and hold his hand. And that's all right. So we go in, and Mesa just beelines for the drums, and she's, doing dancing, and she's having fun. And Ryle wanted to go sit in the bleachers, and he goes, and he and Kurt sit down, and he's like, Dad, we need to get Mesa. And Kurt said, she's okay. And he's like, Dad, we should have brought our guns.
Oh.
And Kurt said, what do you mean, Ryle? And he said, these Indians. His only reality with Indians was on a movie, and the ones with painted faces were killing people.
Right.
And I just about died. I'm like, oh my. So we had to explain to him what a movie was, that these Indians were reenacting, and were sharing their traditions, that they're good people. But that was his reality. That's what he thought was real. He thought we were going to die. And I was like, oh my gosh. And people then say that video games and movies of people blowing each other don't impact our children. Come on. That is their reality. When it becomes normal, becomes acceptable, and pretty soon, there's blood means nothing. It doesn't even mean life or death. It's just, so anyway, I think, explaining to them what is real is so important. And I took that for granted when my kids were at that age. Like, it's a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny because we're so consumed with what's going on that we forget, like, I wonder what it looks like for them. Like, what is the experience for them? It's not just you are off school. It's like, no, what are they actually thinking about? He literally said, I said, are you worried? And he was going, yeah. And he was already at age 6, almost embarrassed or uncomfortable saying it. So he was looking out the window, and he's like, I was like, are you worried? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, is it because you miss your friends? And he goes, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to see him again. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, okay, do you know all your friends feel that way too, probably, right? And he was like, yeah, maybe. And the teacher is going to set up a Zoom call, actually, so all the kids will get to see each other without, but it was interesting perspective to go, oh gosh, like, I really need to slow down. I think a lot of people don't even think that that's the way they're thinking, that they just think they're misbehaving because they're not at home, or they're home and they're not, and I'm like, it's probably something much bigger, because this is something that's going to be very impactful for them,
It is, for sure. Oh my gosh. Well, you're doing a great job, Mom.
So, I mean, I guess it's to be mindful of time, we'll wrap up. I obviously talked to you for hours. So, so is there anything that you feel like you want to say before we wrap up that that's come up, or anything that to make you kind of feel complete?
Yeah, just that these opportunities, like we're talking about the world, and how right now it's kind of getting simplified, but look at this Zoom conference. Like, we're so grateful that we have the technology and we can share these messages. Like, years ago, we would have had to gone to a conference to try to share this and bring people together. And how many people can you reach through this, and the good work? And I just think that, the world is a positive place, and that's what we need to focus on, and that's what we need to manifest in our own lives. And I just am very grateful that you reached out to me. You're a beautiful woman, and I just applaud you for taking the risk and doing this, because it's really, really cool.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, obviously, I feel the same about you. It's been such a fun conversation with so many different things.
Oh.
Yeah, I think as things progress, we'll have to do it again, because I'm sure there'll be updates and all kinds of things. So thank you so much for hanging out this morning and chatting. I appreciate it. And I'm sure we're going to meet, definitely, and we'll continue our conversations for sure.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too.